Hello, students. Here we are talking about Chapter 3 in your textbook, which is Body as a Whole. This has to do a lot with the organization of the body. And then there's going to be several terms in here that have to do with directional terms and planes. All right, so let's get started. All right, let's talk about the organization of the body. You can see on page 31 in your textbook the different organization levels of the body. We start at the smallest organism, and that would be an atom. I guess it's not really an organism, but the smallest component, I guess you could say. We've got our atoms that combine together, become molecules, and then molecules combine together, become organelles. Organelles combine together, become cells. Cells become tissues. Tissues become organs. Organs are in body systems, and then all the body systems put together become an organism, which are us. It starts off in the very beginning from, a cell that is fertilized and becomes a zygote. So we have the egg from the female and the sperm from a male combined together, and that starts that whole process of creating an organism. So we have a term here on the bottom, cytology. Anybody know what that means? Take a look it up and see if you can find out what the definition of cytology is. You might see it later on down the road on a assignment or a test. All right, so let's take a look at some pronunciation of some of these basic words. We have atom, blastocyst, holistic, tissue. Under tissue, histology. What does the term histology mean? Does anybody know? Take a look it up, identify what your root word or your combining form is, and your suffix, histology. It's only a combining form and a suffix in that word. All right, zygote. We already talked about what a zygote is. And then this last one, dysmorphology. Anybody know what that means? All right, we have a prefix. You're also going to have a combining form, and you're going to have a suffix. So take a look in your book and see if you can find out what dysmorphology means. All right, some word analysis that you guys are going to see. Let's take a look at these. Cellular, organelle, and molecular. What is the root word in each of these? So cellular, we've got cellule. Organelle, we have organ. Molecular, molec. What do they mean? What do each of these root words mean? So take a look in your book and see if you can identify what these root words mean. Okay, so now we talk about structure and function of cells. You can see on page 32, there is just a structure of a representative cell, figure 3.2, where the basic functions of life talks about that. You've got manufactures of proteins and lipids, production and use of energy, communication with other cells, replication of DNA, reproduction. And inside the cell, you're going to see all these different organelles. So let's take a look at the next slide. This is the picture that's in your book. Each individual cell part is called an organelle. So you can see there's a nucleus, there's a cytoplasm, there's a cell membrane, there's a lysosome, a mitochondria. All of those components together, organelles, make up a cell, and each organelle has a different function in the cell to make sure that it is working properly. So now we've got some other terms that you're going to see and hear. We have cytoplasm, mitochondria, deoxyribonucleic acid, otherwise known as DNA. Say that one 10 times fast. Electrolyte, intracellular, metabolism, and metabolic. The nucleus, that's that pink, or identified as that pink structure inside of the cell. This is the area of the cell that directs all activities of the cell. So it tells all the other organelles what to do. If your nucleus isn't functioning properly, then your cell won't function properly. Taking a look at a few other terms here. Let's do some pronunciation and then identify the root or the combining form. So catabolism, lysosome, and nucleolus. Here we've got the combining form, catabol, lyso, and nuclei. Okay, so now we talked about tissues. That's another section of, or with all the things combined. So we have different types of tissue, and on page 34 in your textbook, there is a green chart that identifies the different types of tissue groups, their functions, and locations. So you guys can take a look at that table in your textbook. We have connective tissue, epithelial tissue, muscle, and nervous. So let's take a look at some examples. Connective tissue such as bone, blood, cartilage, and fat. Epithelial tissue, the functions are to protect, secrete, absorb, and excrete. Muscle, you have different types of muscle tissue, skeletal, smooth, and cardiac. Your smooth muscle is your digestive tract. Nervous tissue, we have examples that are brain, spinal cord, and nerves. In addition, the connective tissues in a knee joint, you can see there's all different types of connective tissues in here. When we get into the musculoskeletal system, we'll go more into detail about these types of tissues and how they work together in order to form different joints of the musculoskeletal system. But again, this just gives you an idea of all of the tissues that work together to make things function properly. Few terms that you guys are going to see over the course of this semester are these right here, and this has to do with the musculoskeletal system, but gives you an idea that you can see that the first part of the word is the same through all of them, but the last part of the word is different. So that first part of the word, osteo, that's going to be your combining form. That's going to be the root of it. So we know that we're talking about osteo, and osteo means bone. So in all of these terms, we are referring to bone in some way, but the suffix is different. So we have an osteoblast, an osteoclast, and an osteocyte. Let's see how it actually changes the meaning of the word. So blast means to build. So an osteoblast is a building, or is a cell that actually is going to build bone. And then osteoclast means it breaks it down. So again, it's a skeletal, or a bone that's breaking down, a cell of a bone that's breaking down. And then osteocyte is simply just the cell of a bone cell. But again, you can see that the root word means that we're talking about bone. There's different descriptions of the bone within these terms. All right, your organs and your organ systems. The body is made up of 11 organ systems, and you can see this on page 37, table 3.2 in your book. We are going to go into each system individually throughout the chapters, but this table on page 37 is really, really good information about the different organs that you're going to find in each body system and the major functions of each system. I don't need you to know that right now, but in each body system, you will have to know different organs that are in the body systems, and you're going to have to know some primary functions of those body systems. If you want to mark this page somehow, bookmark it and refer back to it. It's just a great tool. All right, so let's move on to positions and body planes. I am skipping section 3.2 in your textbooks. So we start off on page 43. You can see on page 43, there's 3 different diagrams. This is one of the diagrams that is in your book. You will not, it does say you will need to know figure 3.9. I don't have you know the figure. You're not going to be giving it to you, but you are going to have to know the directional terms. So take a look at this picture, and you can see that directional terms have opposites to each other. So let's look into this a little bit further in detail in describing them. So superior or cephalic, it means up here, referring to the head. Inferior or caudal means below or referring to below the head. Actually, caudal means pertaining to the tail. And even though humans don't specifically have tails, the lower part of our spine is considered our quote unquote tail. So it refers to the bottom side of our body. When we talk about distal, distal means farther away from the center of the body or the point of attachment. Proximal means closer to the center of the body or the point of attachment. So for example, if I say my elbow is distal in relation to my shoulder, because my elbow is farther away from the center of my body or the point of origin where that limb attaches to my body in comparison to my shoulder. However, if I say my elbow is proximal to my wrist, that's correct because my elbow is closer to the center of my body or closer to the point of origin where my arm attaches. So my wrist is farther away. It means it's distal. So just keep that in mind. Then we have the term medial, which refers to going inside the midline of the body towards the inside of the body. And then lateral means further away from that midline. So we've got a midline right here. Again, if it's towards it, it's medial. If it's away from it, it's lateral. And we already talked about the midline, that imaginary line that's down the middle of the body. Here's some other differences between some terms, which I already really talked about. So caudal, again, meaning near the tail, versus cephalic, meaning near the head. Supine, that means I'm laying on my back and I'm looking up at the sun. But if I'm prone, I'm laying on my stomach and I'm not looking at the sun. We already talked about proximal and distal. Again, proximal is going to be near the center of the body. Distal is farther away. So make sure you guys know those terms. You're going to see those terms throughout the course of this semester. All right, so let's talk about anatomical planes. You can see the picture or the figure 3.10 on that same page 43. These different planes actually are going to divide our body. They're just imaginary planes, but they're going to divide our body into different components. So looking at this, let's talk about these definitions. The sagittal plane. This one here, this definition is actually a little bit incorrect. I'm going to correct you on that. The sagittal plane divides the body into left and right sides. A sagittal plane itself does not have to be equal, left and right sides. It can cut me down like on this side, and one side would be left and one side would be right. If it is what's considered a mid-sagittal plane, that's where it actually cuts me down right this way to equal left and right sides. So make sure you know that. And then we have our frontal plane. This is the one that's going to cut us like this right here and slice this into front, or otherwise known as anterior, or back, otherwise known as posterior sides. And then the final one, we have our transverse plane. This is going to kind of cut us right, like maybe through our belly area. And it's going to divide us into upper and lower, otherwise known as cranial, cranial meaning my brain, or caudal, meaning my tail portions. So when you're remembering these, just take a look at that that figure on page 43, so that way you can remember them. Few other root words or combining forms related to the planes. We have coronal. Coronal, this is the same thing as the frontal. Think about yourself as putting on a crown. And then that plane there divides us again into front or anterior, or back or posterior sides. Ventral means belly. That's going to be the front side of the body. Dorsal means back. That's going to be the back side of the body. So again, make sure that you study those terms. You're going to need to know them, that's for sure. All right, now we get into body cavities. Again, you don't need to know the diagrams, but you are going to need to know the cavities, and you are going to need to know what organs are located in each cavity. So this diagram is at the top of page 45 in your textbook, and we've got our cranial cavity, which is up here. We've got our spinal cavity, which is in our spinal, or that holds our spinal cord, our thoracic cavity, which is going to be our chest area that holds our lungs, our heart. We have a diaphragm that separates our thoracic cavity from our abdominal pelvic cavity. And our abdominal pelvic cavity is separated into two separate cavities, one called the abdominal cavity and then one called the pelvic cavity. And your abdominal cavity is going to have like your pancreas and your stomach and all of your intestines, whereas your pelvic cavity is going to have like the female parts and your bladder, so your urinary bladder, your uterus, ovaries, and then for men it's going to have the prostate. So again, make sure you guys know these, and here they are again, explaining what each cavity is. So make sure that you guys study these and know these. All right, the next section we talk about is abdominal quadrants and regions. So again, we're still on page 45, and you can see on the left side that we have just different quadrants. Quad means 4, so there's 1, 2, 3, 4. A right upper quadrant, a left upper quadrant, a right lower quadrant, and a left lower quadrant. You will see these in your book and in further medical writings as RUQ, LUQ, RLQ, and LLQ for those abbreviations. So just familiarize yourself with that. And then on the right-hand side, we have abdominal regions. There's 9 of those. And the ones that are on the left and right are going to be left and right. So you can see there's a hypochondriac region. Well, one's left and one's right. And then there's lumbar, one's left and one's right. Inguinal, left and right. But down the middle, you don't have left and right. You just have an epigastric, umbilical, and hypogastric. So make sure you guys know those terms because of their importance. All right, that's really it so far. So let's do a little bit of review here. All right, what do you think? Go through these and identify which one or what's the definition of the term. So epigastric, is it above or below the stomach? Epigastric, is it superior or inferior to the stomach? Umbilical region, is it superior or inferior to the epigastric region? The spine, is it anterior or posterior to the heart? The nose, is it superior or inferior to the chin? The wrist, is it distal or proximal to the elbow? The shoulder, is it distal or proximal to the elbow? The diaphragm, what two cavities does that divide? And if I'm lying prone, am I looking up or am I looking down? In the coronal plane, does it divide the body into right and left halves or front and back halves? So you answer these questions and this will help you with the information in this chapter. Some more review. Body cavities. We already talked about this. These organs. What body cavity and body system are they in? Take a look at your book. Identify where they're located at. You'll find that information in your book. A little bit more review. All right. So, what is a single fertilized cell? You tell me. Possessing a developmental structural defect. Maybe look up that term. Prefix endo. What does the prefix endo mean? And then the study of function of tissues. Which one is it? Is it cytology, cardiology, or histology? Look in your book. Find the root word or the combining form, and then find the appropriate suffix to identify the meaning of it. And a cell that forms cartilage, which one is it? Is it a chondrocyte? Is it a chondroblast? Or is it an osteoclast? Again, look at your book. Break it down. Find your combining forms and your suffixes to identify the appropriate meaning of the word. All right, that's it for Chapter 3, and next one will be Chapter 4.